Welcome to another episode of LexDiscuss Cafe, the podcast where we explore the dynamic world of legal expertise and innovation. Today, we have the privilege of speaking with a remarkable professional. Her name is Sucheta Ray, currently working as legal counsel procurement at ServiceNow. With over 7 years of experience, she is a master at crafting comprehensive contracts, fostering strategic partnerships, and safeguarding organizational interests through meticulous negotiation. Stay tuned as we uncover the stories and strategies that have shaped her illustrious career. So, Sucheta, welcome to Let's Discuss Cafe.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's actually an honor. So thank you so much.
No, the pleasure is all mine. So let's jump right in, right? So far, with your extensive experience as an in-house counsel, what are some of the most complex legal challenges you have encountered, and how did you handle them?
So I think one of the most important thing is, just navigating the landscape, the different jurisdictions and everything, because most of the time that I have worked are always cross-border negotiations. So at that point of time, understanding the law, for example, if I have negotiated with a German law company. So at that point of time, the German law is extremely strict and extremely different from what our laws are. So understanding those criticalities and intricacies is, I think, extremely important. And I feel that, contract negotiation is something that is, you know, generally it's a very tough thing to do for for a lawyer. It's easy to review a contract and have like multiple rounds of iterations, but actually getting into a contract negotiation generally feels a little scary because you really do not know how the other side of party is going to, you know, uh, react to your conversations, or what if they just say that no. I mean, there are people who just come and say no, and then you really don't know what to do at that point of time. That's very difficult. And I think right now for everyone, it's data privacy and data security. It's, I think, very important and very difficult right now to negotiate the terms and conditions of data privacy and data security because of the constant change that's there with respect to the laws, the regulations. Each country is coming up with their own. Initially, it was just our GDPR. Now we have laws in France, we have laws coming in the US. In India, we have a law that's coming up. So it's actually very challenging to mitigate all of those things. And I think these are some of the things that has always been a challenge for me. And I think I'm still really pacing through it right now. So
Yeah, and what you pointed out is pretty relevant. And the thing is that when GDPR came out, this is what my prediction was, that the businesses who are not ready for it is going to suffer, right?
yeah.
If you're not compliant with GDPR, you will have zero business. That's the situation. I'm not talking about minor deals, anything less than 10,000 US dollars, right? But if you're looking for a major deal in a software space and in the tech space, if you're non-compliant with GDPR, you will have
Yeah.
zero business.
True. And it's actually more than that, even for the lesser amount deals, right? See, the other party might not be willing, but maybe you as an organization want to steer clear of any future complications that might come in. For example, when I negotiate a contract, right, I always try to put some form of data privacy and compliance related issue, like, content in the contract, try to have a DPA in place, irrespective of whether or not it is actually required, mostly because of my vision that in case in future the scope changes, or in case in future the regulations change, you need to have something in place which will at least keep us compliant, because once you have negotiated a contract, it is very difficult to go back and renegotiate it, because we have done that and it really becomes problematic.
And one of the interesting prediction that I'm making right now in 2024 on the record is that the same situation is gonna happen with AI laws and regulations.
I agree.
Right?
I agree.
because every company in the future will have AI as part of their business, either minor or major. And if you are a service provider in whatever capacity, you would need to be compliant with AI laws and regulations. The recent, I think Europe again has taken the initiative, giving a broad roadmap that the rest of the world can follow by again releasing or again, drafting the EU's AI Act. And India also has given some advisory. So I think the world is again going to take Europe's example as a roadmap and coming up with their own regulation with obviously slight modifications. But this is the high time the company should start preparing for it. So, I would like to congratulate you because I think you're one of very few legal professionals that I know that has done a certification on this topic, right? So this shows your preparedness and, kudos to you for taking that initiative.
Actually, it was mainly because, ServiceNow as a company, they have very publicly mentioned that they want to shift, they want to use AI and adopt AI in a very large space. So for me, if I need to be a part of the organization, I really need to at least have some understanding of what AI is and, just trying to navigate, because I'm sure in future, whether I'm here, I don't know where I will be, but in future, I'm sure there would be a lot of negotiations around use of AI and regulations related to AI and how the parties are using AI, what kind of information that is getting fed in, what is going to happen if the information is incorrect that is getting AI is coming up with. So I think it's important to at least, because we do not have any laws right now, so at least understand the challenges also help till the time we get a law in place. So I think that was one of my, one of the reasons why I actually decided to do at least a short course to see what exactly is going on,
No, that's fair. And, I apologize for the shameless plug. But the thing is, I have done that course. And the thing with that course is that because it was, I think, drafted, I don't remember the exact date, but the latest EU's AI Act is not...
no, it's
not handled there. Right. And I felt that it wasn't as practical oriented as it should have been.
It was very theoretical in nature, actually. It was a very, it was, not trying to, great university doing great things, which is very important for at least for people understanding the basics. But no, practical instances were a little less missed out, actually. So, true.
Yeah. So the shameless plug is that we have actually launched a course on this topic. I'm one of the faculty members. And the beauty of it is that, what I felt is that, in addition to a lot of lawyers, what they don't understand is that there's a lot of frameworks which don't have any legal validity, right? Like ISO compliance, right? So you're not required to be an ISO 20001 company by any law, right? But if you are, that kind of gives you a credibility. Okay, this is like SOC 2, for instance, in data security, right?
Data security.
So there's a lot of frameworks, industry standards already in place, right? So which I think a lot of legal professionals ignore because they think like, okay, this is not a law, so why should I worry about it, right? I think that's not a very smart way to look at these frameworks because again, as an in-house counselor, your job is to be a business enabler, right? Rather than just safeguarding and mitigating risk. So these were the two flaws that I looked into the course. And that's why in our course, we will be going into these frameworks as well as the EU's latest AI Act. And because I have personal experience in implementing it, so hopefully I would be able to give a lot more practical experience. But again, that's for people to judge, but just wanted to have that plugged in. So
that's nice. So is it live yet, or are you still
live? So the thing is, it's going to the first batch has been launched. The batch will be live from tomorrow. So it's actually quite appropriate time that we started having the conversation. It wasn't planned. It wasn't planned. Right. Because I just before the podcast, I looked at your LinkedIn profile, which I usually do. And I looked at the certification. I was like, oh God, you're one of very few people who have done this certification. I'm happy. I'm really happy to see that, that legal profession is, is not resisting the technology like they used to do in the past, and trying to embrace the new technology. So moving on, the next question that I want to ask you, as an in-house counsel, contract is your bread and butter, right? And as we understand, contract drafting is both an art and a science. So what strategies do you employ to ensure clarity, compliance, and alignment with organizational goals?
The first and foremost thing that I feel is very important is understanding the scope of the contract. It is of utmost importance, at least for me, and I think it should be for a lot of other people. Because if you do not understand the scope, I don't think you're being true to the contract, or you're doing justice to the people for whom you're reviewing or drafting the contract, or with whom you're going to negotiate the contract. Because you do not want to add a clause which probably doesn't even make sense. You can, as a company, as any company, you would always have a templatized version. Let's take an example of a service agreement, right? Now, this service agreement can be used for any kind of services. It's just a template. Now, that needs to be modified. That needs to be, tweaked basis what the scope of the agreement is. Because if the service provider is probably just providing us, say, canteen services, is not equivalent to someone who's, say, providing us with some form of on-prem service. Just, it's a very, very, very simple example. So I think understanding the scope is extremely important. One. Secondly, for me, connecting with the business is very important, because you need to get an idea of the expectations that they have from the agreement. Some business might want to say that this is an important vendor. We do not want any form of too many red lines or too many negotiations. So we want to go ahead with it. Or it's a very important customer and the customer is not ready to entertain, say, more than 10 red lines in a 50-page document. So, you need to understand what the business expectations are so that you can proceed accordingly, because it's literally a waste of your time as well as everyone else's time if you have done a beautiful drafting or a beautiful review of a contract, but at the end of the day, all of the red lines are getting, it's not getting approved from anywhere else. So understanding the business's, idea and expectation, I think, is very important. And the third thing that for compliance, clarity, and alignment is I have an internal checklist for myself. It's a very internal exercise that I generally do. Just lists out the basic things or the most important things that any contract that is required needs to have. So that it makes my life a little easy, because if once I've reviewed the contract, that internal checklist actually helps me see if I have actually missed out on anything, or if I need to add anything, or if I need to maybe change anything. So these are some of the things that I do and I practice when I am reviewing a particular contract.
Yeah, that's really interesting. What you said I think, is one of the smartest way to handle the multitude of problem an in-house counsels faces. But, with the advent of generative AI, right? Have you experienced any technology, any product, or any tool that has really simplified your life in this particular arena?
Not yet, honestly speaking. In my previous organization, they were trying to come up with an automated tool. It was still at the nascent stage, and I think they had just started with NDAs, which are the smaller agreements. But so far, I have used a number of CLM, but I think right now I haven't seen any of the contract management tools which have reached that level, because I think a lot of these things are manual. You have to do it at your end. I mean, integration and, having a list, creating a history, all of those things are, of course, there in most of the contract management tools. But I don't think in any other way it has made my work easy. And also, one other thing that I see a challenge with these tools is how user friendly they are. One, and if people are actually voluntarily using it, because a lot of time I may be, say, working on a tool, but maybe my internal stakeholders are not very keen on doing that. So that again becomes double work. You're working in the system and you're doing things offline. So that kind of creates a mess. So right now, I'm yet to come across any tool that has made my life easy.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that. Now let's talk about risk management and procurement. So as we all know, procurement contracts involve inherent risk. So how do you assess and mitigate these risks while safeguarding organizational interests?
Yes. So I think one of the most important thing is the assessment of the vendor. Basically, a due diligence that is done by the legal team, by the respective business, the supply chain teams, the risk assessment teams. That gives you an understanding of what the vendor is and what risks are associated with them. And depending on the type of the services that they're providing. For example, if their tech and organization measures are in place properly, whether or not they are compliant with certain things, and whether or not there is personal data involved in the transaction. In that kind of situation, you have to figure out whether, if it's an existing vendor, whether or not you have a DPA in place. If not, if it's a new vendor, you have to get into that. So I think, understanding and assessing the vendor is very important. And for me, after I have understood the risk, creating a framework in the agreement to mitigate that risk. That is something that is very important. And then this is a mantra that I have, is you need to connect with the business. You have to connect with the business certain times, because there are situations where some clauses, I have some kind of perspective and the other party would have another perspective, and we come at a dead end. So that dead end can be only solved by understanding what the business wants, and not more than what the business wants, what is the work, and whether or not that particular clause is even applicable. Because if it is not, then why am I wasting time in solve that particular issue? We can maybe just have a single line and relate it to that, and we can go ahead. And thirdly, again, understanding the type of services that the vendor is providing. Because as I have again mentioned before, understanding the services will help you a lot in reviewing the contract, in understanding, because most of the things, of course, we will never go beyond what the organization mandates are. That is never going to happen. But if we need to see if it's a must have or a good to have or not to have, depending on the type of services that they're providing, because those are frameworks. Again, things will change depending on the type of services that are coming in. So I think these are three things that are very important for me to assess and accordingly mitigate. If there is an issue, we can take relevant approvals that are there, because each and every organization has an approval matrix with respect to the kind of risk that they're going to take, that they are allowed to take. So I think these are some of the things that are very important, and that's how I operate.
That's really interesting. But, because this is something, even I deal with, because I sell to a lot of enterprise clients and a lot of my colleagues, a lot of my friends are also in SaaS business. So how does that vendor risk assessment work? So imagine this, like one of the startups that I'm running, it's a 1-year-old startup, right? I have this number of clients and I have this number of reviews. So if I approach you and I say that, I want to sell my product to ServiceNow, and so how would you assess my business?
See, first of all, understanding. So again, it cannot be just done by the legal team. You need to have an army of team. You need your business team to provide you with the relevant information, because I, as a legal counsel, will not be directly connecting with you, who's basically the person who's coming and selling it to me. So it would always happen through the business. Right. So after that, if required, what we generally do is that if there is any relevant documentation that might be required, we might want to see if your patents are in place, or if your IPs are in place. If there is any issues, we might want to, ask if you have relevant tech and security measures that our company would want for any vendor. So these are, I think, some of the things that would be asked from your end to provide to me. If we see that things are almost in place, right? And the things that are not, we can work around. I think in that situation, that particular vendor would be kind of onboarded to the next stage, which is basically, like sending across the contracts, reviewing it, and all of those things. So I think these are some of the ways in which you can assess the vendor if prior to onboarding them, so that in future it doesn't create an issue.
Right. That's again very insightful. So my question was, and this is again a very practical question because this is a situation that even I have encountered. So I was dealing with enterprise and they are asking me like, okay, give me your certificate of incorporation, makes sense. Give me your balance sheet, right? Audited balance sheet, right? And at that time, I don't understand, like, is it a normal practice or is it something really unheard of?
Um, see, these are things that are again dependent from organization to organization. When I used to work in the other organization where I was handling clients, when there was an RFQ submission that was required to be done. So at that time also, each customer would have a very different set of documents that they would want. I think it also depends on the adaptability of risk-taking quotient of a particular company, actually, that, whether or not how safe that they want to be. Because probably the reason they're asking for a balance sheet from a particular organization to see is that how secure they are, whether or not tomorrow there can be a situation where they're getting bankrupted, and if, for example, you're the customer, I am not getting the services, and they just decide, and there is a lot of things that are pending from our end. We might have made some advance payments to you, which we probably will not get back if you have, declared bankruptcy. It's just a very simple example that I put on. So I think it's about risk appetite.
Essentially, business continuity risk that
Correct.
will be right. So
Correct.
how dependent we should be on that vendor, right? That's again is a very important factor. Imagine this, because a lot of our listeners are SaaS founders. So I just wanted, if a new organization, you can really see that if they're honest about like we are a young organization. In addition to business continuity risk, right, as you rightly mentioned, do you foresee any other type of risk that is associated with dealing with especially young startups?
A lot of also IP related issues might come in, because IP infringement, see, nowadays everyone is coming up with a lot of ideas. Everyone might think that their idea is unique.
Yeah.
And so that I feel is one of the most critical issues that might come up with new startups and everything. So I feel that they also need to do their own, and I'm sure they do. I mean, it's not that they don't. But I think that is also very important. But for any organization to get in business with them, for them also, this is very important to see if they have the requisite ownership. So they need to at least have the required papers, required evidence of the fact that they actually do. Because if they don't, if they're not able to submit those right at the beginning, it's a big red flag. And I will probably not go into business with that particular organization. So I think for the startups, it's necessary to have all their papers sorted,
Right.
to avoid any future issues that might come in when they are going ahead and approaching any customers.
Absolutely. This is what I say to a lot of people is that, they talk about data rooms when there's an acquisition happening or there's a merger happening. But I feel that, right now, these days, just the job of onboarding a new vendor itself, there are so many documents, right? So you're compliant with this, what are your IP? So it's like I advise you that have a data room for your clients as well, right? Whenever they want, they can just go there and, see that. And one of the hindrances that occur in this area is that they don't want to share this document just with anyone, right? They want an NDA first, then only they can share all these documents. And that's why they are reluctant to put everything on a single link and just give access to everyone.
Right.
So that's one thing I advise to startups is that, there should be one secure way that you can share all your documents with your potential clients and let their, risk assessment teams, legal team, procurement team, whomsoever wants, they can just access whatever they need.
Right. Well, that's totally true. And again, NDA, of course, is required. I actually have seen people like sending out documents without an NDA. While it's understandable with that you're doing it with a level of trust, etc., it's an advice, I think, for all the new people who are, who are working really hard to get their product available to everyone. It's very important that, you don't need to know everything, but at least an NDA is something that you should have right at the beginning before even having a proper conversation. I think you just need to get an NDA signed between the parties and then go ahead, have all the conversations that is required to be done.
Right. See the interesting observation that I have on this topic. I think there are two set of people. One, people who are overtly conscious when it comes to an banking, and the other people who are overtly, I would say, careless when it comes to NBA. I rarely
Let's
see
call them
some.
trustworthy rather than careless.
They're like either they're too suspicious or either they're too trusting, right? I've rarely seen people who are able to create a fair balance, right? So that's the thing, right? I completely agree with you on NDA side, but again, at the same time, from my practical experience, I would say don't be too cautious as well because you might jeopardize the deal itself, right?
True.
But see, when you are selling something. There needs to be some level of trust, right? It needs to be there. But if you are like, too cautious about it, then you might, because I know so many investors who refuse to meet some entrepreneur because the entrepreneur has put in a condition that they will not disclose their idea unless you sign an NDA with them. Span, right? Is from an entrepreneur point of view, you think, okay, this guy has like, worked his ass off to create this product or create this company. And now he's looking for investment. Why would he wouldn't want the legal safeguard, right? That's one side of the story. Now you think from the investor side, right? Now what is happening is that whether you like it or not, every problem usually solved by a couple of entrepreneurs, right? You are rarely the sole one, even if there's a lot of founders who believe that's the case, but that's usually not the case. Now, the investor, like, he doesn't want to have that liability on his head, right? That I have signed an NDA, and whether they like it or not, they would be interacting with people who are doing a similar business, right? And this kind of gives them a signal that this guy doesn't really trust us, right? So it depends, right? It depends. I wish I could give you a straight answer to when you should ask for an NDA, when you shouldn't ask for an NDA. It really depends. And you need to, just like any contract, it depends a lot on the rule of the game, right?
True.
Right. So that can only be acquired by staying in the game and understanding what are negotiable and what level you can stretch it. Right, that's a very important point. You don't want to give up all your, you don't want to surrender in front of the opposite party, but at the same time, you don't want to stretch it too much because
Too much.
you risk.
Then they just not might be interested anymore. So we have probably 10 other people waiting because at least when it comes to startups trying to sell their business, I feel there would be at least two others behind them with probably similar approaches. So
Yeah, we are absolutely right. And that's where, the answer to that question is so complicated. That when should you press for an NDA? But let's see. I think that the best advice I can give you, get in consult with the good lawyer who is not too expensive. Because in early days, you don't have a lot of money and you shouldn't be investing too much money in the lawyer. Despite being a lawyer who sells his services to startups, I would say that spending too much money on the lawyer is not the smart thing. Your main focus is building a product, finding a product market fit. But at the same time, keeping a little bit of legal protection as well. Because first of all, it's a very minute possibility that you will succeed. But again, smaller possibilities, you will succeed, but then somebody might take an unfair advantage of you as well. So yeah, moving on to the next question. And thanks for clearing these doubts because I one of the reasons I wanted to interview you is I wanted to understand what goes into the mind of the procurement teams, right? Because that kind of also gives the startups who are selling the services, they also need to understand on what fronts they should be preparing for, right? To kind of ultimately, close a deal. So thanks for clearing those things. Now let's talk about compliance, right? So compliance is is a mystery in itself. What is your approach? Like if you are asked to see that you join a new company and you are said that okay, just take care of all the compliances this company needs to do. So how will you go about it?
Compliance, I think, with my very limited experience in compliance, because
Right.
I have always dealt with contracts. It's again, as you yourself mentioned, bread and butter since the very beginning of my career. But I think some of the things I would take care of is our tech and org compliances, because which is very important. And I've seen that a lot of companies will not come and do business with you if you do not have an ISO certificate, or if you do not have an SOC certification, SOC 2 Type 2 certification. So those are, I think, some of the things that are very important from a tech organization perspective. Then again, I feel that, data privacy regulations, if for me, data privacy is always a very important part of all my contracts as well as compliances that I generally have looked into, to see if we have a data privacy officer in the organization, if there is a data privacy team that is there in the organization in place. That is very important from my end, because I am a part of the US organization. So I have to see if we are in compliance with the, if with their trade regulations and trade compliances. We have to check if we need to see if we are doing business with any of the restricted organizations, restricted entities. So these are, I think, some of the very important things, because the fines related to those are extremely high. So the government regulation, you have to see if it needs to be checked thoroughly from my perspective.
No, that's really interesting. And the reason I asked this question, even because I knew that you don't deal with compliances so much, is because, like, how do you, because I'm always curious to this question, is that, as a legal person, you understand, okay, legal mandates are this. Okay, I should be doing this. I should be doing that. I shouldn't be doing this. But when it comes to operational realities, they are like, miles apart, right? So
Yes.
how do you create a balance between the fact that, you're meeting the legal requirements as well as you are being a business enabler, right, in the organization?
No, this is, I think, one of the most important thing is to have a open communication, first of all, with the business. You cannot think of them as a different, a different party. They are our customers. We are serving them. We are, working for them, and we are working with them. You have to work really closely with the business to figure out what is the need of the hour, what is the requirement right now, and how to approach it. There are some certain situations where we have come by, for example, that, a vendor is trying to get onboarded with us for many years, but we are not able to do it because of some of their, policies, say, related to data privacy, because for us, data privacy is extremely important. But finally, if they are getting onboarded, there are also situations, but through the negotiation, you see that their policies have practically not yet changed. On paper, they might have something, but their policies practically have not yet changed. So in that situation, you have to talk to your business and tell them this is the situation. And now you have to tell me whether or not you still want to go ahead with this particular vendor, or do you want to maybe pause for a while. So I think an open and honest communication with your internal stakeholders are very important. Even, and not just the business, with your data privacy team, with your risk assessment team, with your finance team, to see everyone is in tandem with the conversation that is going on right now. And if this particular vendor or if this particular customer is what's taking the risk for.
Absolutely. Well said. So now it's the rapid fire round time. So are you ready?
Yes.
Morning person or night owl?
Morning.
Okay.
Morning. I was a night owl for a very long period of time, but I think I have changed it now.
In college, you were a night owl?
I don't think, yeah, of course. I think even in the initial years of working also, you're pretty much a night owl. So now I think I am more of a morning person now.
I'm trying to make that transition. Still hasn't happened for me. Let's see. Now the next question is favorite legal movie or TV series?
Uh, So movie is Jai Bhim. I don't know. It's an incredible movie. I think I love that movie. And series, being the most cliched person, I love Suits. I love Suits. I think it's just a drama. I mean, none of those things happen
Right.
in reality. But I think just the drama and just, everyone else looking at Suits and telling that, okay, fine, this is how your life is. And yeah, you can think about it in that way. So, but I think that, yeah. What about you?
No, the problem that I have with Suits is that, the premise is stupid, right? You just have to break the rule of the firm that, we just hire from Harvard people. Like, you don't need to hire a lawyer. You can hire him as a paralegal or a clerk and then let him do whatever you want to do. Why did you have to make such a big lie, right? That the whole series is around that. Like, why are you
about it.
your own career, right? You want somebody in a law firm, you are a partner or you are about to be a partner, you can change that role. I'm sure the secretary the Harvey Specter had, she was not from Harvard, right? So why can't he have the protagonist as a secretary or a paralegal as well? So that was my biggest beef with the movie. But tell us about Jai Bhim. Like what is that movie? I haven't heard about it.
So Jai Bhim is basically a movie about a lawyer. It's a South Indian movie, right? It's about a lawyer who takes on the challenges that the lower strata of the society, faces. So, and the entire premise, because he comes from one of those backgrounds. So, and he had faced a lot of issues when he was a kid. His mother had faced a lot of issues. His family had faced a lot of issues. So, he takes it up upon him to, work with the ground level people and try to change the system and the way people look at them. It was a very different movie in India in a way. It was not too dramatized. It was a very soberish movie. So yes, it was a good. You should watch the movie. I mean, I think it's available in I think it's in Prime Video. I don't remember right now, but yes.
No worries. I think people will Google it to figure it out. So the next question is one word to describe your negotiation style.
Aggressive.
Okay. Okay. Next question. If you could draft a contract for any fictional character, who would it be?
Um, Pride and Prejudice has a character called Fitzwilliam Darcy.
Okay.
So he is this very rich guy who falls for the protagonist, who initially hated the protagonist, but then realizes the quirks that he kind of hated is what he likes. And it's a very beautiful story. It's very nice. But I think he would really need a prenup. So I would love to draft a prenup. I mean, not trying to be stand out like a sore thumb right now, but with respect to the beautiful story that they have, how they fell in love and why they fell in love. I think these guys are going to have a lot of probably were having a lot of conflict after the wedding. So I think that it would be nice to, and he was a very rich guy, so it would be nice to be his lawyer and draft his prenup and handle his legal issues.
Wow. I sense a bit of jealousy here.
Oh yes, I think he was my.
Somebody is in crush with the guy, and
I think yes, I think the fictional crush. Yes, I think it was one of the first books that I had read. I do read. I try to read a lot, and I think it was back. I think when I was in maybe 8th or 9th standard. This, from the book. I mean, I saw the movie later as well. So there is the movie. There are 2 movies actually. There's one more movie called Bride and Prejudice where there is Aishwarya, which has a very similar story. I mean, same storyline, but just set out in India and England. But yes, I think I did fall in love with the character. And I mean, when am I going to find my Darcy is always the question.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so pretty soon.
I have.
Might have
I
already.
have.
You have already found it. Good to know.
I am mad at guys. Don't.
Okay, I didn't.
My husband's gonna watch this podcast.
Yeah, then it would be pretty sad if you haven't found them. So now let's moving on from the personal journey to the professional life. A legal principle you live by.
I think my principle has always been equality,
Yeah.
equal treatment of all. This is what I think, being in a tech organization, I think it is very important to understand that, equality is a very important and basic principle of law. Everyone is needed to be treated equally, irrespective of their caste, gender, creed, etc. And for me, it's actually very important that maybe women are given, equal responsibilities and equal opportunities in the society, and so that they can reach their potential and be great. This is what I believe and I live by.
Awesome. So where do you feel our society is right now on that spectrum where, the women are, obviously not equal to men to a level where women are equal,
We
completely
are reaching there.
equal to men on that spectrum. Where do you feel our society is right now?
We are reaching there, I feel, but in most organizations we do see the diversity inclusions that are there. All of these companies have these policies, and it's not just having. But I think it's just not about having the policy, because by policy there might be a mandate that you have to hire this many women in this year, or I mean, in whatever way. But I feel that it's more than the policies. I think the practice is what is important. After getting hired, are you more relied on the women? I relied on one person or the other basis the gender, or basis the actual work that he or she is doing. So I think theoretically we have reached there, but I think from a human perspective, the bias is going away. I cannot say that there's no improvement whatsoever that's happening, but I think we still are a long way to go. I think certain companies like ServiceNow is doing great when it comes to women empowerment. We have forums called Women at Now, where there are a lot of things that are going on. There are a lot of policies which are helping the women in the organization when it comes to, say, maternity leaves, etc. All of these things are there. So I hope that there are other organizations where probably a lot of things might not be available. So I think that, it is important that all organizations take a step to make some policies or certain provisions which will help women grow and compete equally with everyone. That's all that I would like to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And, because, you had a very brief stint with a law firm. So tell us about, on this particular aspect, like giving equal opportunity to women. Like, how would you rate a typical law firm versus a typical corporate?
In my law firm, honestly,
Not in your law firm, obviously. I mean, for one law firm.
No, so for that one, I have to say that my boss, there were a lot of women in the organization, so it was not applicable there. But no, generally, I feel that companies are doing better when it comes to, maybe I might be completely wrong, and it can be a very biased opinion from my end and might become controversial. But I think that generally, the companies are doing better when it comes to, engaging women than law firms. And I think it's a lot of things depends on the culture of the law firms as well, the work structures and everything, which maybe inhibits their growth in some way or the other. But I do feel that general companies are better than law firms when it comes to women in a particular role.
And why do you think that's the case?
Honestly, I think with companies, there is, again, the other thing I would say, that there are policies in place, not just say for a particular team, but for the entire organization. So when there is a policy already set, you end up, it becomes a mandate for each and every team to kind of follow it. With law firms, I don't think that's the case, because it's just one large unit of a certain type of services, right? In that situation, I feel the law firms are a little less structured than but a company, from a corporate structure, right? Then I think so. I think that is probably one of the reasons why this is the situation.
Makes sense.
Maybe I'm not really, I'm not an expert at that, but I think it's just a personal
View.
event. Yeah.
No worries. So yeah, the time is running. So I'll ask just one last question for you. Is that now looking back, what advice would you give to legal professionals, especially law graduates who are just graduating from their law school? What their approach should be when they are looking at legal technology?
Yes. So I think the first thing that I tell everyone is know your basic. You need to know your concepts very well. You need to know your basics. You can learn reviewing a contract. You can learn negotiating a contract, but you have to have a command over the basics. For example, what is an indemnity? What do you mean by jurisdiction? What is the importance of a governing law? I'm just giving you some things, that might be a part of a particular contract. So I think knowing the basics, understanding the basics gives you an upper hand at like at your peer level to compete with them. That's, I think, one. And second advice that I would give, that communicate and connect with your seniors, your managers, as much as you can. Like, understand how they work, how they operate, how they negotiate, understand their style, understand, because that will not only give you an insight of how they look into a particular thing, it might also give you an understanding of how you might not want to do certain. I think that is very important. And again, connecting with your seniors also when it comes to certain doubts, certain agreements. I don't think that any question is a stupid question, because I even now ask my manager every time whenever we are in a call. I always have a list of doubts that I want to connect with him, and every time that I think we spend the first 15 to 20 minutes of our call just discussing my doubts. So I think you should never ever stop connecting with your seniors, your managers, who can give you a greater understanding of things.
Well said, and completely agree with you. One of the smartest advice I have heard on this topic, because people forget the people management is a very important aspect of being an in-house counsel, right? So you actually you gave both the advice, like be good in basics and be good in people management. So that's that's like really well-structured advice. So, Sucheta, thanks a lot for joining us on the podcast. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much. I had a great time. Thank you so much again for having me.
It was completely our pleasure. And that wraps up this enlightening episode of Let's Discuss Cafe. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Join us next time for more engaging conversations with leading legal professionals. Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep discussing. Thank you for listening to Let's Discuss Cafe.